I think Randor should be looking at resumes before he starts hiring on new help. Here's a look at the Mattel Master Universe Origins Snake Men Infiltrator Slithering Spy in Disguise. Posing as an Eternian Royal Guard, the Snake Men Infiltrators silently sneak around to take out heroes. You know, I can't quite place, but there's something off with his face. Before, of course, we get a close look at the Master Universe Origins Snake Men Infiltrator, let's grab the tape measure and see how tall the figure stands. This, by the way, marks the last figure we've looked at from this wave. I took a bit of a break because, of course, I wanted to look at the Eternian Palace Guard as well. And now that we've looked at that, we can look at this one, as this one's basically using the same body as that one from before. The Snake Men Infiltrator, though, stands 5.5 inches in height, or the figure's going to be 14 centimeters tall. Bringing now in a couple of figures for comparisons. Obviously, the one I wanted to bring in first, and the real reason why I looked at him first, here's what the figure looks like with the Eternian Guard. Both the figures are using not only the same bodies, but also using the same armor. But yeah, there still seems something off about the face of the Infiltrator. A couple of other figures we can also bring in as well. Speaking of snakes, here's what the figure looks like with Squeeze. Here's what the figure as well looks like with Serpent Claw Man-at-Arms, who happen to have been part of the same wave. Here's what the figure as well looks like with the Horde Trooper Snake Man. And here's as well what the figure looks like with Duncan Man-at-Arms. I'm sure it'd be very hard to believe that the figure from this same wave would also come included with the same comic. What? Is that possible? It is. The figure comes first of all with the Fading Fortress, which happens to be the same mini comic as the other three figures we've looked at from this wave. Squeeze, as you can see, does have his pet snake, an impossible thing to actually pull off with the actual figure, and then there's Serpent Claw Man-at-Arms on the front. Quickly flipping through the pages. I did cut, unfortunately, the corner, but I have another 3 of these comics at least. That's always the good thing, at least, of using the same comics for all the figures from the wave. You can see, again, there's Serpent Claw Man-at-Arms. There's Skeletor. Down below, there's Spikor. I think probably my favorite figure from this wave. Quickly, again, flipping through it, it's not a very long read at all. It would be very easy to sit down for a few minutes with a cup of coffee or whatever you're drinking at the time and easily just find out what's happening in the story in Man-at-Arms and, of course, all the things going on with the characters behind the scenes. On the back, though, behind the scenes, behind the book, you have the also characters featured from this wave. So there's Squeeze, Snake Men Infiltrator that we will be looking at in this review, Serpent Claw Man-at-Arms, and Spikor. A lot of S's, by the way, I will say. Every character from this wave has something starting with S. Squeeze, Snake Man, Serpent Claw, and Spikor. Didn't mean to spit all over you guys. Something that also comes included, though, with the Infiltrator is the fact the figure comes included with a little pamphlet. The pamphlet, once again, just drives home, I think redundantly drives home the idea that you can actually change the head, change the arms, and change the lower torso and feet if you wanted to swap that around with other existing Master Universe, not even Man-at-Arms, Master of the Universe Origins figures. That will immediately be going to the recycling bin. I missed the recycling bin by like that much. The figure as well comes included with a couple of accessories. One of which, speaking of the earlier looked at Eternia Royal Guards, I have a hard time getting that out. The Palace Guard happened to come included with this as well. Figure comes included with a Glade. Not that plug-in that basically aromatizes your entire room. I wouldn't even use those anyways, but a different type of Glade. The Glade itself is actually molded in the same silver plastic, and it's pretty close too. Nothing bums me out more than when a company decides to reuse the same accessory and then they'll color it exactly the same. At least that way I can actually have myself a little armory. I'm going to end up ultimately putting these in with Castle Grayskull, where I think these accessories first originated from, and I'll just basically have myself a little armory where all the guards can actually grab their weapons. Same exact Glade, though, and it can be clipped into his hand. The benefit also of this one is the fact that, unlike the Palace Guard, he does actually have gripping hands on both sides. Well, the original one that we looked at, I'm just going to bring it in right now, had a relaxed hand to hold the shield, but this one actually benefits from having 2 gripping hands, so hey, how about that? The other thing it can grip onto, leading me more to believe that something isn't quite right with the Infiltrator, is also comes included with a little serpent scepter. Again, there's a whole bunch of S's. Bringing in the other scepters we've looked at from earlier Snake Men, you'll see, in fact, it's the exact same mold, but cast in different plastics. Green, red, and now we got ourselves silver. It's the exact same scepter, though. Still, though, looking at this, it reminds me of G.I. Joe the movie, and the little time snake that slithers up the pole, Globulus, is counting down the time before the space spores start to explode. Speaking of turning people into snakes, no hiding the fact that those people would be turning, citizens would be turning into snake people. Anyways, this can be clipped into his hand as well. All this time of talking about it, I just wanted to actually show you what it looks like. The serpent is actually the hardest thing to clip in place, just because, again, like the snake is slithering around the post. It makes things a little bit more difficult for the snake man to properly hold it. But you can hold that, and then we can go ahead and grab the glade from the side here and clip that also in place. And now you can actually have the character wielding both weapons. I don't know if I necessarily have him walking around Eternia carrying around a snake scepter. I'm sure that'd be drawing even more attention that the character's already getting anyways. Putting the accessories away for right now, at least, we'll be bringing those back in for final looks. Getting a closer look now at the Infiltrator. The interesting thing about this is the fact that, first of all, he does have a green face. And if you were to flip down the mouth guard, it's a little harder to do, and you're not really even supposed to do it either. But if you flip it down, you can see there's a fully sculpted face underneath. I think it still is the unmasked Duncan head sculpt that we did get from before. I think the only thing that's different, in fact, here's the Duncan head sculpt. It does look to be the same, doesn't it? I can't be the only one, I'm sure, that's seeing it. It does look to be the same head sculpt, of course, very obviously painted differently, both in the green skin, the red eyes, and the little pupils in black. Nice looking head sculpt, though, but I think for better concealment, we'll just kind of flip that up a little bit. It's softer plastic at all. The head sculpt as a whole, though, I mean, looking at this and then bringing back in the Eternian Guard, same head sculpt, or same molding from the helmet at least. Same faces. Of course, one is just cast in a more darker coloring of blue, and the yellow is also a lot brighter and more vibrant. It isn't, though, as clean. You'll see there's a lot of areas here, unfortunately, on the Infiltrator, that some of the blue has bled onto the yellow, or maybe the other way around, they haven't applied enough of the yellow, and some of the blue is bleeding from underneath it. It's not the cleanest, unfortunately. This side's a little bit better, but I've got a few little splotches of paint that's made their way onto the helmet. The actual armor as a whole, though, is, while still using the same one as from before. It loses, unfortunately, the paint that's on the front for the eagle crest. This one was painted in gold, you remember. This one doesn't have the gold, it's just molded in the orange plastic alone. The thing I really, though, like about the Snake Man Infiltrator is the fact that he also has darker coloring for his body. All the things that were originally sort of more of a lime yellow or lime color green is now much darker military or kind of swamp green that they've used for the body build. It's a little bit darker. It's actually a really nice color that they use for the green. In a way, though, I mean, looking at this and then looking at Man-at-Arms, in a way, I'm kind of a little more tempted to use this body for a Man-at-Arms down the road. I'm sure when we eventually get the 2000X Man-at-Arms, of course, using the same body torso as the Serpent Claw Man-at-Arms, I'm probably sure they're going to be using a more of a darker green than more of the lighter green that was on the original Man-at-Arms body. The armor is attached in the exact same places. I don't know why, though, on the armor on this one, it seems everything is a little more tighter. When we first looked at the Palace Guard, for example, everything was really sitting loosey-goosey. The forearm guards, for example, the shoulder pads, all the things were really sitting loose. Seems a lot more tighter, though, on this newer figure. The joints are also a lot more tighter on this figure. He also has one other thing that's a little bit different, too, than both Duncan and the other Palace Guard, is that you can see his belt. His belt not only has a darker brown for the loincloth, but also sports more kind of a bluish gray. Really nice color for the lower half of his body. For the figure's articulation, it's going to be exactly the same. The head's going to be rotating all the way around on a ball joint. It does allow the head to look up and look down, and you can move it back and forth. One thing I also found was funny, being that the fact that they are using this from the mold of the Palace Guard, it happens to have hair on the back. Now, I don't know if that's just snake hair. Does snakes grow hair? And if they do, would they be the same color as the rest of their face? One little oversight, unfortunately, for Mattel using the same same head, is the fact that they've sculpted still the hair on the back. They just simply have just painted it green. Hey, why not, right? We don't need to actually paint this any color. I think the whole idea is you're supposed to be looking at it, just assume it's all one part. You could also say it's maybe scales, but that's clearly more hair. The arms do rotate all the way around. That's the same on both sides. Unfortunately, rotating the arms, though, especially on this figure, I find it's prone to popping the joints out. You can bring those arms out at 90 degrees. There's a swivel at the actual elbow, not at the bicep, at the elbow. There's the hinge right there as well. You can bend that back and forth. And the hands do rotate also all the way around. You can hinge them back and forth as well. Waist is on a straight swivel. The legs are on a ball joint. Once again, you can take those legs and move them forward, move them back, but really tight again on this figure. He has a bend at the knee, allows the lower leg to rotate, and ankle pivot both up and down this way and back and forth this way. I will say one thing, though, about the Snake Man Infiltrator. While he's not hiding at all the fact he's a serpent underneath the helmet, I will say, though, his joints are a lot tighter than all the other figures we've looked at lately here. Master Universe Origins figures are usually hit or miss when it comes to tightness on joints. I mean, hey, we just finished looking at the Palace Guard, for example, and he's extremely loose in the head. I don't even know why he's as loose as he is. And yet, ironically enough, being that this one's using the same body, using the same, of course, peg system, and you got to imagine using the same head, while this head is nice and tight, poor Palace Guard, you can see how loose that actually is. I like the colors that, of course, they approached with when they came to the Infiltrator. Of course, it makes it a little more stand out, the fact he's not using even the same armor as all the other Infiltrators or all the rest of the Palace Guards from before, but you like the darker colors. And if they haven't already thought of this, I'm sure, considering that we have, after all, looked at, let's bring him in right now, Serpent Claw Man-at-Arms. I did say in his review, let's bring these guys over just a little bit. In the review, though, of Serpent Claw Man-at-Arms, I did say for the fact that they are now using a brand new tooled armor piece. I'm sure that's going to lead down the road to doing a 2000X Man-at-Arms. And if that's the case, I would love to see them maybe approach the colors more darker to what we get here with the Snake Man Infiltrator. I like the darker colors. Using the same body, sure, as the Eternian Palace Guard, but I think they're doing it a little bit better here for what we get with the Infiltrator. Okay, I did cheat a little bit in final looks here for the Snake Man Infiltrator. Technically, the figure does not include two glades, but I thought the glades were cool weapons anyways, that I would use the one that came included with the Palace Guard, which happened to be molded in the same silver plastic. Thank you, Mattel, for sculpting us in the same silver plastic. I thought it would be a lot more menacing to have the figure displayed with both. The benefit of this one, unlike the Palace Guard, was the fact that the Infiltrator does actually have two gripping hands. When we had looked at the Eternian Palace Guard, it actually had to have a relaxed hand in order to hold the shield. While this one may not be able to hold the shield as well unless you want to kind of hold it as it's in he's holding it in front of him, I much prefer to have gripping hands on both the figure's forearms instead. Now, while of course it's a very obvious use for Mattel just to simply remold the figure from the Palace Guard we looked at before, at least the colors are a little bit darker. Now, there's, of course, the little problem of consistency. The Palace Guard was a lighter coloring of green and was also a lighter coloring of the orange, but at least this one does have darker colors, which, again, evoke the idea that I'm sure down the road, Mattel's got planned a 2000X series release of Man-at-Arms. We already have the tease, really, with Serpent Claw Man-at-Arms and the armor that came included with that figure. Now, with the darker colors that we get here for the Infiltrator, I gotta believe that we are going to be getting a 2000X Man-at-Arms down the road. Now, of course, if you have picked up this figure for yourself, how do you have them displayed? The benefit also of this one is that you don't even always have to have it displayed with the snake face. If you don't really like the snake face, just use the body. I did say in the review for example, of the Palace Guard that I wish the set was packed in two instead of just the one. If I got tired really with the idea of having a snake face on this one, and I'm sure this one's going to ultimately be a peg warmer also for this wave, I could easily go back and just buy more of these. The colors aren't going to be quite the same as the Palace Guard we looked at before. The darker colors, I gotta say, work a little bit better on this figure. And the joints also are a lot tighter on this figure than the Palace Guard from before. But have you picked up this figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. And now that we have wrapped up the entire wave of Squeeze, Snake Man Infiltrators, Serpent Claw Man-at-Arms, and Spikor, who would you say is your favorite figures from this wave, and who would you say are figures that you're going to pass on? I have a feeling people are probably going to be passing on Serpent Claw Man-at-Arms. Don't pass on Serpent Claw Man-at-Arms. He's actually a pretty cool-looking figure. And even if you don't really like the idea of a Snake Man infiltrating the Royal Palace, at least you can use the body again for something else. I mean, it doesn't even have to really be a Palace Guard either. You could use a head for He-Man, for example. Why not? You can do whatever you want in your collection. But let me know if you have picked up this figure down below, or do you feel it's a total pass? Also, as well, if you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and you would like to stick around for more, we may have wrapped up things, at least for right now, for the Origins line, but we will also be looking at some more Masterverse stuff. So if that's the kind of thing you'd like to see more He-Man stuff for, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, and you're also as well turning on the bell notification. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.